What's up, guys? So in this part of the series I want to go over traps, mainly the coil spring traps that I use for coyote and bobcat size animals. These traps will work well for fox and some raccoons, bigger raccoons, but this is just going to be an introduction to anyone trying to get into trapping. A little bit about trap terminology, trap anatomy. I'll go over tuning traps, all the options you have as far as brands go. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to consider is your local laws. You want to check into those before you decide what trap you're going to buy, because they do vary widely from state to state. In North Carolina, we can use 7.5-inch traps. So definitely check into your local laws. You want to stay legal. Alright? Local laws don't just cover trap sizes. They also include things like shock springs and swivels. In North Carolina, I'm limited to an 8-inch chain from solid ground to the bottom of the trap. If I have any longer chain than this, I have to add a shock spring. I go ahead and add those because sometimes when you set an earth anchor, they do tend to come up a little bit, and I can't guarantee only 8 inches of chain. Aside from legal reasons, shock springs are great things to have on your trap. It will reduce the shock applied to your anchor or your rebar, as well as the shock to the animal when they lunge. I add them just because. Let's go ahead and take a look at some traps. It'll help me to explain some of these things a little easier. Alright? Alright, guys. So what I've got here are 3 different traps. This is a Duke number 2 round jaw. This one is an MB 550. This one is a No BS Lures K9 Extreme. So I've got 3 different traps, but generally speaking they all have the same anatomy. These are the levers. That's what you push down whenever you're going to set the trap. Okay? Levers. This is your pan. That's your pan. That's what the animal steps on to fire the trap. Now, in the case of these two, this is your dog. This actually goes across the jaw and hooks under the pan to keep the jaw down and the trap set. In the case of this one, this is a dogless trap. If you notice, it doesn't have the dog that comes across the jaw. This little tab right here actually hooks onto the jaw. I'll show you that set in just a bit. So you've got the levers, the pan, the dog. You've also got the springs, which gives them the name coil spring trap. Alright, now let's look at the bottom. If we flip these over, this is called the frame. It's generally shaped like an addition symbol, the frame. So when you're tuning traps with the dog, you will bend this portion of the frame right here, which I will get into that whenever we do the tuning traps segment of the series. Okay? Let's move on. Alright, guys, now let's talk about swivels. On the Duke trap here, they run a J hook through a hole in the frame. That makes a swivel point. That works just fine. This is their swivel. That's pretty standard. Alright. On the MB traps, they have the crunch proof swivels. These are crunch proof, meaning that in comparison to a standard swivel, they're quite a bit thicker. Because you can actually get, if you'll bear with me for a second, there we go. you can actually get a coyote to chew on these and crush them in. Now the MB traps usually come with a length of chain and 2 crunch-proof swivels. There's the shock spring I was talking about earlier that I add to my traps to make them legal. The No BS Lures trap, again, nice thick swivels. Alright, you can never have too many swivels. When an animal gets trapped, the first thing they're going to do is run and roll and fight. You want that trap to be able to spin freely so you don't harm the animal. Alright? Now, I've got all 3 of these traps set. And as you can see, the dog goes across the jaw to keep the trap set. This is dogless. There's no dog. The actual pan hooks onto the jaw. Alright? Now, I've got a video on how to do this to a trap, but if you'll listen, this is called a night latch. If you ease the trap pan down, you'll hear a click. Just like that. That means the pan is level and the trap is ready to fire. I actually have a video on this explaining this in detail. Feel free to check that out. Again, on the MB, listen for that click. There you go. Pan's nice and level, trap's ready to fire. That is a luxury. It's not necessary. You don't get that on the Duke trap. But if you will check out my night latch video, I will show you how to do that. We will cover this more when I go over tuning traps, because it doesn't matter how expensive or cheap a trap is, no trap is ready to go right out of the box. They all require some tuning. Alright guys, that pretty much sums up trap anatomy. If you can understand the basic parts of a trap, if you know the difference between dogged and dogless traps, it'll help you out greatly when I start explaining how to tune traps and things like that. So, thanks for watching. Stick with me.